So, hello there, and welcome back to yet another Night of the Movies podcast. I'm Spike Knight, and in these podcasts, I like talking all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm continuing on with my Star Wars film reviews as I review Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. So, let's get into it, shall we? Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones was once again directed by George Lucas, who previously directed the original Star Wars movie from 1977, Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, and who also previously directed Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, which this film is, of course, the sequel to. And that's why I was really excited to see this film for the first time. All the way back when I watched this film for the first time, however many years ago it was now, I was so excited to watch this because I've already spoken about my experience watching The Phantom Menace for the first time and what it did to me. I watched it on VHS and I couldn't stop looking at the VHS box that I watched it from for the week after, and it was the Saturday after I watched The Phantom Menace for the first time that I watched Attack of the Clones for the first time. And I couldn't wait to see where the story continued because I loved The Phantom Menace so much the first time I watched it. So when I sat down to watch Attack of the Clones, I was on the edge of my seat. Couldn't wait to see where the story was going. And then, 2.5 hours later, around about 2.5 hours later, because this film was just under 2.5 hours, the film ended. And I knew I'd enjoyed it, because as soon as the film ended, I went outside with my lightsaber and pretended to, be in the Jedi battle that you see at the end of this film. I wanted to be in that Jedi battle. But I also knew I hadn't enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed The Phantom Menace. I was more perplexed by how I felt about this movie. I knew I'd enjoyed parts of it, but parts of it I didn't quite understand how I felt about those parts. And over the years, since I saw this film for the first time, over the many years since I saw this film for the first time, my liking of this film has decreased so much. This is now my least favourite Star Wars movie. And the thing is, I also don't really like Solo: A Star Wars Story because that film doesn't feel like Star Wars to me. But if someone was to ask me which is better, which one would you rather watch, Attack of the Clones or Solo: A Star Wars Story? In a heartbeat, I would say Solo: A Star Wars Story because at least that film is over in about 2 hours and it moves at a pace and it does have some fun parts to it. It doesn't feel like Star Wars to me. It feels like, I don't know, a random space adventure that just happens to involve some Star Wars characters, but at the same time, I'd much rather watch that because it moves at pace and it's got some good parts to it, even though it doesn't really come together. Still, I'd much rather watch Solo over this film because this film is boring. I hate using that word, but at the same time, I can't think of another word to describe my thoughts on this film. It's straight up boring and dull. It moves at such a slow pace. And the film's called Star Wars. You want these movies to be exciting. You want these films to be full of fun, battles, spaceship battles, lightsaber battles. You want these films to be so much fun. But when you watch Attack of the Clones, it has 3 action set pieces. It's got the chase through Coruscant, which happens early on in the film. It's got the fight that happens between Jango Fett and Obi-Wan and Camino. And then it's got the Jedi battle at the end of the movie. But other than that, there's no action sequences other than those 3 action sequences, which I will say are not terrible. I mean, the Jedi battle at the end of the film, I don't really like too much. But other than those 3 sequences, this film doesn't have anything about it that really screams excitement to you. Or to me, really. It's like, it's such a bad film because it looks fake as well. None of it I believe in. I mean, it does feel like 90% of this film was shot on blue screen or shot on green screen. If you look at behind the scenes photos, that's what it looks like. It looks like the actors are working with blue screen for the majority of the time. I mean, there's about 10% of the film which it looks like they shot on location. You know, there's a couple of shots of Anakin and Padme walking around Naboo, which it looks like they shot in Italy, which I think they did. Do correct me if I'm wrong. And there's the section of the film where Anakin and Padme go back to, well, they don't go back to, but they go to Luke's homestead, and that looks like it's all shot on location. But I'm struggling to think of any other part of the film where it looks like they shot on location or used real sets. And that's always been one of the big draws for me with Star Wars. The sets that the sets that are created for these movies. You know, say we all about the sequel trilogy, love it or hate it, but you cannot deny they leaned into more practical effects and they used more sets for those movies, and I think it actually makes those films look better. Whilst with Attack of the Clones, more than any other Star Wars movie in my opinion, it looks fake, because George Lucas, by the time he came round to making this movie, in between making The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, he seemed to become obsessed with CGI even more than he was when he made The Phantom Menace. You know, this film, it looks so digital. So much of it looks fake, and it's dated so badly. So badly. Like, the film was only made, 22 years ago? Round about that now. Because I think this film actually released on May the 19th, 2002. So it's literally almost 22 years old. And the funny thing is, the original Star Wars trilogy came out from 1977 to 1983. But those 3 films have aged so beautifully, so beautifully compared to this movie. This movie looks like a film that was like it has unfinished CGI. There's so many moments where it does not look like characters are actually walking in a room. It looks like they're walking on blue screen and they put in the room after in the post-production, if you follow my thinking. There's so much of this film which looks fake, and I don't believe in any of it because the CGI is so dated now. It's so dated to the point that I'm watching this and going, where are these characters meant to be? Because I don't believe in this location. Why does this location look so fake? Why can't they just go to real locations or use sets to actually bring this scene to life? That's one of the reasons I prefer The Phantom Menace over this movie. Because yes, The Phantom Menace has got a plethora of problems. I'm not saying it doesn't, but at least The Phantom Menace used sets in many of its scenes, and at least it actually has some practicality. It actually had some practical effects going on with that movie. You know, in the establishing shot of Naboo is a model in that movie. If you look behind the scenes, they made Naboo, the whole city Naboo, into one big model. Same with the establishing shot of Mos Espa just before the pod race sequence take place. That whole establishing shot was a model, and I like things like that because yes, The Phantom Menace used a lot of CGI, but it was also still using practical effects. It wasn't just relying on CGI. Whilst this movie feels like it's just relying on CGI, because you get these establishing shots of locations like Naboo in certain moments, and it looks completely digital. It looks completely CGI. And I'm sitting there and thinking, I mean, come on. Can you not just do what you did with The Phantom Menace and make a model of Naboo, and then use that as your establishing shot? And it sounds like a small thing, but when the film's not working because it's so slow, you start to notice all these details, and you start to notice that actually, yeah, this film's relying way too much on CGI. Plus, another big problem with this film is that it focuses so much on the relation between Anakin and Padme. But the problem is, it focuses so much on this love story, and the problem is, the love story, there's no love in that story. There's no chemistry between Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman. 2 actors I really admire, by the way. Hayden Christensen I've come to like a lot more as Anakin, particularly from Revenge of the Sith onwards. Like, I really like his appearances in Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, and in Revenge of the Sith, it feels like he's really, he really found his own in the role. But I didn't really like him in this film too much. I'm not going to go into that because it feels like everyone's already done that already. But and Natalie Portman, she's become an Academy Award winning actress, I think. I don't know. Yeah, I think she's won an Academy Award. And I've seen her in plenty of things, and I think she's a wonderful actor. I think she's a very, very good actor. But there's no on-screen chemistry between those two actors, which is slightly odd because apparently, according to reports, they were going out at the time. I'm going to move the chair forward a bit. They were going out at the time that this film was made. I don't know how true that is, but that's what some reports say. But you watch that romance take place on screen and there's nothing there. I don't believe in it at all. It just feels fake to the point that at the very end of the film, you see those two characters get married. And they turn to look at the river because they're on this balcony where they get married. They turn to look at this river, and then the end credits coming up. You know, bum ba dum 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 bum ba ba bum bum. The end credits start. I'm thinking, I don't believe that they've actually just got married. It feels that marriage scene in this movie feels so fake. It feels like George Lucas was behind the camera going, right, kiss, and then turn around and look out at the river. But in actuality, George Lucas wouldn't have been doing that because although many actors who've worked with George Lucas have spoke positively about him, very positively about how he's this creative genius, they've also said that he's not the best director. He doesn't give the best direction. So in actuality, it was probably a producer, you know, behind the camera going, right, kiss, turn around, look at the river. That's what it feels like when you're watching that scene. It doesn't feel real. It feels like they did it in 1 or 2 takes, and it's like, oh, so much of the film just feels so fake. And it's the same with the romance. It's weirdly paced. And at one point, you're seeing Anakin and Padme roll about in the grass, and you're going, why do I need to see this? How is this paying any relevance to the rest of the film? And there's really cringy lines of dialogue during the romance when Anakin says to Padme, I am haunted by the kiss that you should not have given me. Oh, for God's sakes, this is not how people speak to each other. I spoke about this in my review of The Phantom Menace, and by the way, go and check out that review if you haven't already, because I put a lot of effort into my review of The Phantom Menace. I spoke about this in my review of that film when I said that it seems like George Lucas became out of touch with, I can't speak. It seems like he became out of touch with reality from the making of Return of the Jedi to The Phantom Menace. Because in The Phantom Menace you get lines like, are you an angel? In Anakin and Padme's first meeting. And in this film you get lines like, I am haunted by the kiss that you should never have given me. Oh, for heaven's sake, this is not how people speak to each other. And as I've already mentioned briefly, the love story is so weirdly paced because you see them having fun in the grass and everything, and then there's this one scene where Anakin uses a force to cut an apple in half or something, and then the scene following, and bear in mind we haven't seen much of their romance, we've only seen about, at the most, and this is being generous I think, we've only seen about 10 minutes of their romance leading to this point. The next scene, Anakin is professing his love to Padme and how he wants to be with her, and you can't help but feel, man, you're coming on quite strong here, mate. You know, you're professing your love, and we've only seen you together for like 10 minutes in this movie so far. The pacing and the tone is all over the place in the romance. Plus, there's so many bad lines of dialogue in the romance. I've already spoken about that really bad line of dialogue where he's going about the whole... I'm not even going to repeat it because it just annoys me. But also, there's this moment when they are sitting in the grass, they're sitting on the grass together, and Anakin is asking Padme if she's had any past loves, and Padme goes, oh, there was this boy called Paolo who had lovely black hair, something like that, and then literally she's only speaking about this person for like 3 seconds, and Anakin goes, oh, I get the picture, and it's like, oh my god, oh, you just asked her, did she have any past loves? Let her talk about it. Let's let the scene actually play out. Let's actually get to know more about Padme. But no, we're cut short because Anakin acts like a spoiled brat in this film. I do not like the character of Anakin in this movie. There's so many moments where it's like, oh, I don't care about you that much because of the way you are acting. Like early on in the film, when he's talking to Padme before they leave Coruscant, she says to him, stop looking at me like that. I feel uncomfortable when you look at me like that. It's something... She says something around those lines, and it's like, I don't blame you because of the way he looks at her throughout this film. It makes you feel uncomfortable. It's not... The acting isn't great from Hayden Christensen, but I also don't think it's totally his fault because I don't think George Lucas was a great actor's director, and I think you can really feel that in the romance between those two in this movie, and the film focuses on it so much. It's the main focus on the film, and it's a love story without any love to it. That's the big problem. I mean, the best part of the love story is a John Williams theme that accompanies it. You know, bum 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 ba da da dum bum ba da da dum bum 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 bum. That's the best part of the love story. The love story feels so forced and fake and without any love. And at the same time, on the side of this love story, it got this kind of spy thriller storyline going on with Obi-Wan, which sounds on paper like it would be thrilling, like one of the most exciting things to watch in a Star Wars movie. Obi-Wan going to this planet which doesn't show up in the database, in the Jedi databases, and the Jedi Council. Nobody really knows where it is, and then he goes to explore the planet and he sees the clone army, and then he sees his bounty hunter that's been trying to kill Queen Amidala, Padme, and you think, oh, this is going to make a great thriller story. It's going to be it's going to be truly suspenseful and intense to watch. But the problem is, it's so strange, and it's so slow. The storyline starts off with Obi-Wan going to Dexter's diner, and Dexter, I mean, talk about bad CGI. The way the character Dexter looks is so dated now. And he's talking to him, Obi-Wan goes, do you know anything about cloners? And then Dexter goes, well, there's cloners on Camino. But there might be cloners there, but there's going to be cloners there. Did I tell you that there's cloners on Camino? Cloners. Oh, he just keeps mentioning the word cloners over and over again. And it's like, I get the point. There's cloners on Camino. Dexter keeps telling us we don't need to keep having it spoon-fed to us. The meeting between Obi-Wan and Dexter is so bad in this movie. It's so weird to watch. The whole Dexter's diner scene. It's like, and people go on about it now. People say, you know, I follow many Lego fans online because I'm a big Lego collector myself, and I've heard people say, oh, we really want a Dexter minifigure because he's such a classic and memorable character from the Star Wars movies. And I'm like, no, he isn't. He's not memorable whatsoever. Dexter, I mean, he's barely on screen in Attack of the Clones. He probably has at the most 5 minutes of screen time, and in that 5 minutes of screen time, he keeps going, cloners, there's going to be cloners on Camino. And it's like, oh, for God's sake, we get the point, there's cloners on Camino. Let's get to Camino. Then when we get to Camino, I like the fact that it's actually raining there because it adds more effect. I like that there's actually rain falling on Camino, because one of my big problems with the Phantom Menace, although not necessarily a big problem, but a problem I had with that movie was you get to the big battle between the droids and the Gungans, and it's bright and sunny. There's no overcast in that battle. It's not raining whatsoever, and if it was raining in that battle, it adds so much more effect to it. Yet we get to Camino when it's raining, and it actually adds more effect to the planet's introduction, you know? But then, right, we get to Camino and meet the Caminoans, you know, the characters that live on Camino, but they all speak weirdly. There's no passion in their voices, there's no character to them. They all go, Mr. Jedi Obi-Wan Kenobi, we have been expecting you. Do you want to see our clone army? And it's like, why are they not speaking with anything to them? They're all speaking in the same tone, and they all look so weird because, again, this film is dated so poorly that I don't believe for 1 second that Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan is actually walking through the halls of Camino and is actually looking down at the droid, not the droid, sorry, I don't actually believe that he's looking down at the clones being trained and being made into clones at one point. I don't actually believe he's looking down at the clone army because I don't believe in any of Camino, and the Caminoans look so weird and they talk so weirdly. I was like, what was George Lucas going for? Why does so many of the characters in these movies speak with the same tone to their voices? I've heard people say that the characters in the prequels just speak at the same tone, and that's been their main criticism of, you know, all three films. And I don't think it's totally true. I don't believe that of The Phantom Menace, although I can see where they're coming from there. And I don't believe that with Revenge of the Sith. I think Revenge of the Sith actually brings out some genuinely good performances in these actors. But here, I do get where they're coming from. Every single character speaks at the same tone and doesn't have any emotion or anything to their performance. They all speak like they're reading the script. They all speak like somebody's holding up the script behind the camera or behind where they're looking from beyond the scene, if you follow me. They all speak like they're reading the script, and there's no emotion to these performances, and that really comes across in this film, particularly in the Camino bit, where it's like the Caminoans are so forgettable because they speak, there's nothing to them. They just go, "Oh, Master Obi-Wan Kenobi." It's like, for God's sake. And then the storyline continues, and we get the fight between Obi-Wan and Jango Fett, which is not a bad fight, but also it's not well shot. It's a mildly entertaining fight because it's Jango Fett versus Obi-Wan. It's someone with a lightsaber versus Boba Fett's father. And because Boba Fett was such a cool character in the original trilogy, and because this film was made after the original trilogy, that fight is, you're into it a little bit because it's that character versus Obi-Wan Kenobi, and we all like Obi-Wan Kenobi, particularly Ewan McGregor playing him. And that fight sequence isn't bad, but just before the fight sequence, we get the first meeting between Obi-Wan and Jango Fett, and Obi-Wan says, "Have you been to Coruscant recently?" Because he thinks Jango Fett might be the assassin who was trying to assassinate Padme. And Jango Fett goes, "I might have been." And I'm like, you had him right there! He's literally just told you that he was in Coruscant early on this film. Catching him now! And he's not even wearing a jetpack or anything. He's not got his helmet on. It's just played by Tamu Morrison. And sign note here, I love that we get to see Tamu Morrison in this film, because watching it now, it makes me smile more, because he now plays Boba Fett in the Star Wars universe, in The Mandalorian and in the Book of Boba Fett, and I think we're going to see him return in the Mandalorian movie in 2026. So yeah, I like the fact that we got to see Tamu Morrison here, and I like how he got to play Jango Fett, and now he's playing Boba Fett. However, that meeting between those two characters, it's so badly written, and it's kind of laughable to watch. There are a lot of laughable parts of this movie, which I'll talk about in more detail later on in this review, but that first meeting between Obi-Wan and Jango Fett, yeah, it doesn't work. And that, really, Obi-Wan should have been the one to kill Jango, because their confrontation was set up early on in the movie at this point, so they should have met again during the fight in the arena at Geonosis later on in the movie, and he should have been the one to kill Jango Fett, not Mace Windu. That's one thing I never really thought worked. Mace Windu shouldn't have been the one to kill Jango Fett. It should have been Obi-Wan. And, you get this fight sequence at Kamino, which isn't bad. But then the storyline continues, and Obi-Wan goes to Geonosis, and he discovers that Count Dooku is with a bunch of villains, and they're planning to do some bad things with the droid army. But again, you don't feel anything what's going on. It's not thrilling to watch. It's just, a lot of it just is slow, and it's dull, and it's not well written. You're just thinking, what the hell is this planet? What the hell is Obi-Wan doing? What? I don't really care, because the film's not made me care up to this point. And then Obi-Wan gets captured at Geonosis, and that doesn't make any sense. Because later on in the movie, when all the Jedis show up at Geonosis to help save Obi-Wan, Anakin and Padme in the arena, they seem to get past the Geonosians and the droid army and Count Dooku and all the other villains that are at Geonosis at that point. They all seem to get past them remarkably easily, yet Obi-Wan, he's going about Geonosis, and he gets caught really easily. And all I'm thinking is, that doesn't make any sense with the later on in the film, because all the Jedi's literally come out of nowhere in the Geonosis arena at the end of the film. Mace Windu literally comes up right behind Count Dooku, and it's like, how did he get past the droids? Because Obi-Wan didn't manage to do it early on in the film. How become at least 30 Jedi who show up at the end of the film managed to get past the droid and the Geonosian army? It's like, it doesn't make any sense. And Obi-Wan's storyline in this film, I love Obi-Wan. Look, I got cut out of him there. But his storyline in this film is not compelling, or engaging, or exciting, or thrilling to watch, and it really should be. And going back onto Anakin's storyline, he goes back to Tatooine because he wants to free his mother, who he thinks is still a slave. And he discovers, by the way, this bit always makes me laugh. He goes to Tatooine and he sees Watto again, and Watto's now got a beard. It's like, why did we need to see Watto have a beard? I don't know. It's a funny detail that the people who do the CGI for this film decided to put in there, and I'm like, why? Okay, whatever. But still, that's not a big problem. It's something which always makes me question, like, I don't understand the decisions that were made in the film, in the making of this movie, particularly in the post-production. But anyway, okay, Anakin goes back to Tatooine, and he wants to go and save his mother. And he goes to save his mother, but she dies and he watches her die. And the thing about this moment, it's not terribly done, but I don't feel any emotion behind that death. And I should do, particularly from someone who's lost a parent. I have lost a parent. One of my parents passed away. And so when I watch that scene, I should be completely broken. I should feel almost, like I want to bawl with tears. But I don't. I watched that scene, and I'm going to be completely frank, for the longest time, I didn't actually know that was Anakin's mother dying. Partly because the film is not well written at all, but also because the scene is so darkly shot. The lighting there is like, I can't really see what's going on unless I close the curtains when I'm watching this film. And also because there's nothing that emotional about it. There's no drive to Anakin getting his mother back, in my opinion. There's nothing really there about... It's like, okay, I understand what they're going for, and I understand this is meant to be a very emotional scene, but I'm not feeling it, and I should feel it. From somebody who's lost a parent, I should be feeling this scene a lot more than I actually am, but I'm not, because there's no emotion behind any of the characters, any of the actors' performances, nor is there any emotion behind this storyline, and it almost feels forced. Like, Anakin has to go back and see his mother die, because that sets him up to be Darth Vader later on in the Star Wars franchise, and I'm like, It's another problem with this film where it feels like it has second film in a trilogy syndrome, because this is a prequel trilogy. It was made before the original trilogy, and this is a second film in the prequel trilogy, and it feels like it's trying to continue all these stories from the Phantom Menace, but it also feels like it's trying to set up more for the later films in the Star Wars franchise, and trying to set up Anakin's path going into Revenge of the Sith, and it feels, a lot of the storylines feel forced and shoehorned. Like, I've never liked the way Jango Fett was incorporated into this movie. I love the character of Jango Fett, mainly because of the way he looks, mainly because he's Boba Fett's father. I remember for the longest time when I was a kid, I wanted to get my own Jango Fett figure, and I managed to get like 10 at once on eBay. Anyway, that's another story for another day. But the thing is, I don't really like the way the character is used. I think that character could have been more like Boba Fett, and yet, I don't know, the character, he feels like he's just put in there because, we need to include something about Boba Fett's father at one point, but I don't really get the purpose of Jango Fett. I know he's been, I don't really get the purpose of him whatsoever. I was about to play devil's advocate, but I don't really get it. And Count Dooku is a wasted villain, doesn't come into the film until an hour and 20 minutes. I was watching the film for the first time in a good couple of years the other day, and Count Dooku first appeared in the film. I'm like, wow, it's literally almost 1 hour and 17 minutes into the movie, and you've waited this long to introduce Christopher Lee as the villain. You have Christopher Lee as your villain in the movie, and you waited this long to introduce him? Why? Doesn't make any sense. And the Count Dooku villain is wasted. And I know, right, I should have said this early on, but I'm saying this now, so it counts. I know people have watched this film now after seeing the Clone Wars movie and 7 seasons in the animated Clone Wars TV show, and find more value in this film because it connects more of the dots. It makes, apparently if you watch, and this is from people close to me who said this, apparently if you watch the Clone Wars TV show, it makes Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith better. And I'm glad people feel that about these films. I'm super happy people feel that way about how the Clone Wars has changed the perception on the prequels. However, I do not think that it's good storytelling or good filmmaking. A film should stand on its own 2 feet. It shouldn't be reliant on me having to watch 7 seasons of a TV show in a completely different format, because it's an animated TV show and these are live action Star Wars movies, I shouldn't have to watch 7 seasons of a TV show and an animated movie in order to value these films more. That's not good storytelling, that's not good filmmaking. Even if that was George Lucas's original intention, it's not a good intention. It's like a film should stand on its own 2 feet, and I shouldn't have to go, oh, well, Count Dooku is actually not a wasted villain because he's in the Clone Wars more. No, I should be able to watch these movies and understand who these characters are, where they've come from, and we get told that, Count Dooku and Obi-Wan knew each other, same with Count Dooku and Mace Windu, but I wanted to learn more about that. I don't want to have to watch an animated TV show in order to understand that Count Dooku and Mace Windu want to know each other, or Count Dooku and Yoda want to know each other. I understand that might be explored in an animated TV show, and I understand that might add more value to what's going on in this film. And if you watched any of the animated Star Wars TV shows and went back and watched Attack of the Clones and appreciate the film a lot more, I am so happy for you. I wish I got to have that experience, but personally, I don't like the animated Star Wars stuff. It's not for me. I find it really hard to watch because of the style of animation. So I'm not going to watch that, and that means I'm not going to get value out of this. But I don't care, because I should not. You understand the point I'm making. I should not have to watch something else to like this thing more. That's simply bad storytelling. Because the problem I have with Solo as well, when Darth Maul shows me that movie, I'm like, where the hell has he come from? Because we saw him die in The Phantom Menace, and yet we haven't seen him come back until this point in the franchise. And it's like, oh, but if you watch Clone Wars, this actually makes this scene in Attack of the Clones far more it's far more meaningful. I'm like, I don't care. If you watch Tales of the Jedi, it makes this interaction far more meaningful. I'm like, no. That's not good storytelling. Tell your story in the 2 hours and 20 minutes that this film runs for. Don't try and tell it somewhere else to make this film better, because that ain't good filmmaking or storytelling whatsoever. Yeah, there is so much. There's so many problems with this film. I mean, the laughable side of it all. The film opens with one of the most laughable explosions I have seen in a film ever. The person who's posing as Queen Amidala walks off this spaceship, and the spaceship blows up, and it looks like, I mean, what? He's that's all I'm thinking when that scene happens in the film. Like, what's happening? There's been this terrible explosion. Okay, we're moving along now. So many laughable parts, like in the arena later on in the movie, when Padme jumps off the sort of platform pole thing she's on, and she jumps onto the creature that Anakin is riding. She seems to do a perfect jump. All these kites interactions. There's so much wrong with this film. And talking about the finale, I just almost made my pop fall down on my desk. Talking about the finale of the movie, there's this big battle that happens. It's a big Jedi battle. And I get what George Lucas was going for, because, I can imagine a kid. I was like this, actually. I can imagine somebody at a younger age watching The Phantom Menace for the first time and seeing all the Jedi together in the Jedi Council and going, I really want to see them in a battle, fighting the droids, all the Jedi in a battle, fighting alongside each other. And that's what George Lucas gives us in this movie. So I get what he's going for. However, the battle is completely fake. It's going back onto that thing I said before, that so much of this movie feels fake. The whole battle looks entirely CGI'd. And, I mean, apart from a couple of the actors which they're like, Mace Windu looks real on the scene, as is Obi-Wan, as is Anakin, as is Padme, because the actors were actually there filming the scene. But everything else in that battle, everything else in that giant Jedi battle that goes on in the end of the film, looks so unbelievable, and not in a good way whatsoever. Everything is CGI'd there. All the clones are CGI'd, and it takes away from any of the grit of the battle, and it takes away from any of the excitement of the battle, because I don't believe in anything going on. I'm like, yeah, it's all CGI and it's all spectacle, and the spectacle isn't awful, because George Lucas, yet again, was pushing the boundaries in terms of digital filmmaking with this movie. But it makes me appreciate when there's more practical effects used in battles in other movies, because this film has an almost entirely CGI battle, and I think it suffers for that, because I don't believe in anything in the battle whatsoever. And this leads me on to talking about the John Williams musical score. I like the John Williams musical score for this film. I think he's got some really great new themes in here. For instance, I adore the love theme for Anakin and Padme, you know, bum 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 ba da da dum bum ba da da dum bum 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 bum. I love that theme. It's such a beautiful piece of music. I also love the music that plays during the chase through Coruscant early on in the movie. I love the music that plays when we are first introduced to Camino, you know, bum 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 ba da ba da dum bum 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 ba da dum bum 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 ba da dum bum 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 bum. I've gone way too long singing the theme already, but you get the point I'm making. I love that piece of music. But even though I do think this is a good John Williams Star Wars score, because it still sounds like Star Wars, and yes, he makes the film watchable, because without the John Williams musical score, I'm not sure this film would be watchable. It's my least favourite John Williams Star Wars musical score. And I don't think it's nearly as good as it should be. And my biggest issue with the musical score for this film is the music that plays during the battle at the end of the movie. It's no new John Williams music that's used. And I'm saying this, by the way, as a big John Williams fan. John Williams has been such a huge part of my childhood, continues to be such a huge part of my life now. I listen to his music daily. Just before I did this review today, I was listening to some music from this movie. But the music that plays during the battle sequence is nothing new that was composed for this film. We get the same droid theme that was used in The Phantom Menace, where we see the droid activated for the first time in that movie. We hear some of the same battle music that was used in The Phantom Menace during the space battle. We hear some of the music that was played during the pod race sequence of that movie. But it's not any new music. And the music editing in that battle, I always find very odd, because it's jumping all over the place. And I'm noticing this for two big reasons. First of all, because I'm a huge John Williams fan. And second of all, because what's going on I'm not that into, because there's a CGI, there's nothing really to it. So I'm listening to the music more, and I'm listening to the way it's edited. And it's edited so strangely. Yeah, the musical score is all over the place in the finale of this movie. And there isn't that many new themes. Something I adore about listening to a Star Wars score is the new themes that were created for the film. And yes, there are some new themes which were created for this movie, for sure. Some great new themes that I tried singing early on in this review, not too long ago now. But I wish the score was better. I wish, more than anything, that he composed new themes for the action sequences and the battle sequences going on towards the end of the film. That whole stuff in the arena with Anakin, Padme and Obi-Wan. The Jedi battle that happens at the end of the music, because again, it's just reused music from The Phantom Menace. And maybe that was George Lucas. Maybe that was George Lucas going, well, you composed such an incredible score for The Phantom Menace, we're going to reuse some of that music. Or maybe it was the fact that John Williams was so busy in 2002 when he was composing the music to this film. In the same year, he also composed the music to another sequel, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. He also composed the music to Steven Spielberg's Minority Report, to Steven Spielberg's Catch Me If You Can, and he composed some new music for E.T.'s 20th anniversary soundtrack release. So he was doing quite a bit in 2002, and perhaps that was the reason that he didn't put as much effort into the score for this film. Maybe he ran out of time because he was so busy, and he did plan to compose new music for the battle stuff, but then he got signed on to do another project, or Spielberg rang up and said, I'm making another film, will you do the music for it? I don't know, but I think it was a waste to not have more new John Williams music. And there are some great moments where the music is used. Like I love how the duel of the Duel of the Fates theme is used when we see Anakin on the speeder going to get his mother back. It's foreshadowing where his story is going. I like things like that in the movie, and this film does have perks such as that. Yet at the same time, there were moments in the film where the music doesn't really suit with the visuals. Like whenever we see a spaceship, about to lift off from a planet, or we see a spaceship going to a planet for the first time, where you're introduced to a planet for the first time in this movie, we get some exciting music playing. Sometimes it works, like in the introduction to Camino, but then sometimes you're thinking, why is there exciting music playing it? Because the film isn't exciting. The music doesn't suit the visuals as well as, say, it did in The Phantom Menace. In The Phantom Menace, you can see what George Lucas was trying to go for. He was trying to make things more exciting than they actually were. But in this movie, he's trying to do the same, but the film's not exciting, so the music doesn't really work, and you get this exciting and melodic and often passionate sounding music playing, this beautiful orchestral music playing when a spaceship is going from one planet to another, but you're thinking, why? Because nothing actually exciting is going on. The music doesn't really work much in the context of the movie. And listening to the score outside of the film, if you listen to the score on Spotify, it's really great. But the score and the way it's used in the movie and the musical editing, it always makes me scratch my head. Because, like, another instance of this is later on in the film when you see Count Dooku on his speeder flying away from the Jedi battle. The theme that plays for the introduction to Camino plays, and you're thinking, why? That was Camino's theme, and you're playing it now when you see Count Dooku flying away. Why can't Count Dooku have his own piece of music? I know why, because he's a wasted villain. He's not in this film that much, and he's not in Revenge of the Sith that much either. But still, why can't he have his own theme? Because General Grievous gets his own theme in Revenge of the Sith. So I don't know. It feels like John Williams either ran out of time, or George Lucas didn't want him to do as much work as he did for The Phantom Menace. I wish he did do more work though. Again, I still like the score, and it still sounds like Star Wars, which not all the Star Wars musical scores have sounded like. They don't have an all encapsulate that feeling of Star Wars, but it's not Williams' best work. Nor is it Williams' best work on the Star Wars franchise, to the point that I will say it's my least favourite Star Wars musical score. And going back on to the battle sequence, I was just thinking about this when I was talking about the John Williams musical score. If the droids win the Battle of Geonosis that we see take place at the end of the movie, the exact same thing happens if the clones win. So it's like, there's nothing to this battle. Let's come back onto that. Why is this battle taking place? Because either way, Palpatine wins, and the battle feels so inconsequential. So that's just so much of this movie, because we know where things are going. Why are we taking so long focusing on Anakin and Padme's love story? There's no good reason to focus on that love story so much. And my favourite part of the movie, one of my favourite parts of this film, is one of the very last shots that we see of Senator Palpatine looking out onto the clone army, and this grand orchestral version of the Imperial March plays in the background. Boom, boom, boom. Bomb, ba bomb, bomb, ba bomb. We hear that playing in the background as Palpatine looks over to his clone army, and it gives me chills every time, because that's my favourite moment in the film, because it's what the film really should have focused on. The whole idea of the birth of the Empire, the whole idea of this is what's going to terrorise and, cause so much distress in the Star Wars universe. That's my favourite moment, because it really starts to lean into that. But the rest of the movie, it's all about Anakin and Padme falling in love, but there's nothing there. And there are things I like about the film. There are things I like about it, for sure. You have to admire, once again, as I do about The Phantom Menace, that George Lucas was trying to push the boundaries in terms of filmmaking, in terms of technology and filmmaking when he was making this movie. He was doing more digital filmmaking. I don't like it. I think it makes the film look even worse visually than The Phantom Menace. But you've got to admire that he was trying to push the boundaries yet again, which he didn't need to do when it came to the sequel to one of the most hated prequels of all time. He didn't need to do that. Also, I do like how this film develops on the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan. I wish it did that more. I wish it did that so much more, because then I would feel more when they have their big duel on Mustafar, towards the end of Revenge of the Sith. But I do like how it leans into it a little more. I like the duel between Yoda and Count Dooku. However, I think in the duel you can easily tell, you can for sure tell that it's not actually Christopher Lee as Count Dooku doing all the stunt work, because Christopher Lee was quite old when he made this movie. I mean, Christopher Lee is one of the best actors ever, in my opinion. His performances and so many movies I've seen him in, just utterly captivating, and he's one of the best parts of this movie because it's Christopher Lee. He's one of those people who can read the phone book and make it interesting, and in this film it does kind of feel like he's reading the phone book with the lines he's given, but it's Christopher Lee, so it's good. But I don't believe he's doing any of the Jedi lightsaber wielding whatsoever, because it's Christopher Lee, and you can tell when a stunt person is used in his place. But again, I like Christopher Lee in this movie, and I like how this film uses Samuel Jackson more, because Samuel Jackson is barely in The Phantom Menace. Every single time I rewatch the prequels, I always think Samuel Jackson's in The Phantom Menace far more than he actually is. He's only in like 2 scenes in that film, if that. I'm not entirely sure how many scenes he's actually in, but it's not that many. Yet in this film, he's got a bigger role, and I like how we get to see more Samuel Jackson in this film. And one of my favourite shots in the entirety of the Star Wars franchise is in this movie. It's when young Boba Fett holds Jango Fett's helmet to his head. I think that shot is beautiful and conveys so much meaning and sets up Boba Fett's journey so well. It's only one shot, but I think it's a very memorable shot. Plus, I like the world building. I like how we got to see new planets in this movie, like Kamino. And I like how it's raining there. It adds more effect to what's going on, particularly in the fight between, Obi-Wan and Jango Fett. Because it's raining, it makes their fight seem a little more intense than it actually is. I also like how we get to see Geonosis in this film. Although, Geonosis visually doesn't look that different to Tatooine. So when the film, in its middle section, is coming between Anakin's storyline and Obi-Wan's storyline, because Anakin is on Tatooine, because Obi-Wan is on Geonosis, because it's coming between those two, I wouldn't fault somebody for getting mixed up between the two locations, because visually they look similar. I know I've watched this film in the past, and I get to the middle section and I'm not concentrating that much because either I'm building some Lego at the spare time, because this is certainly one of those Star Wars movies you can put in the background. You can put on in the background whilst you're doing something else. I said that about The Phantom Menace. This film even more so. But anyway, I've been building Lego in the past, and I look back at the film and I'm like, oh, am I focusing on an Obi-Wan storyline or Anakin's storyline? Because visually the planets look quite similar. Geonosis had a different terrain. If it wasn't just sand again, and if it didn't look a bit more orange than Tatooine, I think it would have worked a lot better. I think they didn't really think that through, to have two storylines going on where the two characters who are connected are on sand planets that look not entirely dissimilar. I like the world building, particularly as we get to see the Jedi Temple in this film. We also get to see some of the nightclubs in Coruscant. I like that sort of world building, but I also think the world building could have been better. So I like the world building, but it's not as good as I initially thought it was when I actually set out to do this review today. There are things I like about it. I don't think it's unwatchable, because it does have some okay moments. The chase through Coruscant is fun to watch, although it doesn't really make any sense at one point when Anakin jumps out the speeder in the Coruscant chase, and he's falling through Coruscant, and it's taking him forever to do so, and he's not hitting any of the speeder or any of the vehicles in the air at that point in Coruscant. And you can see there's thousands of vehicles flying through Coruscant at that point, and Anakin doesn't hit any of them. And it's a fun chase sequence, particularly with the John Williams musical score going in the background, which actually adds something to it. The same way I wish I wish they did it with the battle later on in the movie as well, but he didn't. But still, it's not a bad chase sequence. And the fight between Obi-Wan and Jango Fett is okay, but so much of this film, it's just boring to watch. It really is. Such a tedious watch. That's so exposition heavy. There's a lot of characters explaining the plot to one another. There's a lot of characters walking into rooms and explaining what their plan is and explaining how they're better than the other characters. There's a lot of characters talking, which you don't really want from a Star Wars movie. It's like George Lucas constantly needed to explain what was going on, and he was constantly confusing himself whilst making the movie. And it was also kind of like when George Lucas was writing the film, or co-writing the film, should I say, because he co-wrote the film alongside Jonathan Hales. It was kind of like he got bored writing the script for this film. He got bored directing it, and guess what, George Lucas? I got bored watching it. I was shocked to learn a couple of years ago this film premiered at Cannes Film Festival. I was shocked to learn that, because I reckon George Lucas thought he had like a Godfather type storytelling when it came to this movie. I reckon he thought he had a masterpiece for the ages when he came to premiere Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones at Cannes Film Festival. But he didn't. He had something which was far from a masterpiece. It's a complete disaster. It's a terrible movie, and it's not completely unwatchable thanks to the John Williams musical score, but it is the one Star Wars movie that I do not look forward to rewatching whatsoever, because it's just so slow. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones, I'm going to say it's a 3 out of 10. I mean, it's absolutely awful. And I got depressed talking about this movie, because I want to love every Star Wars movie I watch. I hate being negative about Star Wars. People seem to love being negative about Star Wars nowadays, and I don't like that. You know, if you love this movie, that's awesome. I celebrate that for you. I heard someone say this the other day that I was watching online. They said that Star Wars is like a restaurant, you know, and when you look on the order, when you look on the menu, I can't think of the word there, when you look on the menu at a restaurant, you're not expected to like everything you see on the menu, nor are you expected to order everything you see on the menu. You just order the things you like or the things you love, and that's what Star Wars is like. I don't have to rewatch this film if I don't want to. And guess what? I don't a lot of the time. When I rewatch the Star Wars movies, I often skip this film. But I'm totally okay with that. I love that people now have this appreciation for the prequels. And I do have a tiny little nostalgia for it, because I did watch it when I was a kid, and it did still feel like Star Wars to me then. And when I watch it now, I still have some of those same feels, you know, seeing the Jedi battle, even though there's nothing really to it. I'm like, yeah, come on. I remember watching the Jedi battle for the first time and running outside after into the garden and pretending to be Kit Fister on that battle. Although, another thing, when you see all the Jedi show up in the arena in the battle to save Anakin, Padme and Obi-Wan, they're all making weird noises to sort of, you know, make us think, oh yeah, these Jedis are really trying right now. They're really, they're struggling to defeat the droids, even though it looks really easy to defeat the droids in these battles. But anyway, they're all making noise like they're struggling. And then Kit Fisto does this really weird smile during the battle. It's like, what? I don't understand this. And then, just as they are all cornered and they're outnumbered by the droids and they think their time is up, Yoda comes in with a gunship and all the Jedi look confused, like, where the hell's Yoda come from? But it's like, you must have known Yoda was coming with the Republic gunships and the clones. It's like, there's so much that you're watching this film and thinking, what was going on? Like, what? How did all the Jedis know where Anakin, Padme, and No, I was about to say Anakin, Padme, and Padme. How did all the Jedis that show up towards the end of the film to save Anakin, Padme, and Obi-Wan, how did they all know where they were in Geonosis? Because Geonosis looks like quite a big planet. But they happen to know that these three main characters were in the arena at that specific moment. They happen to show up at the right moment. So many things wrong with it. But it's not unwatchable, at least in my opinion. It's a terrible film that is kind of saved by the John Williams musical score and kind of saved by some moments such as the C-3PO and R2-D2 storyline, which I do find quite funny. It doesn't play any relevance to the plot, but when you see C-3PO's head go on top of a droid's body and then C-3PO's body gets attached to a droid's head, I do find that funny, and it is kind of entertaining to watch. And, you know, some of the spaceship and creature designs, that's something I've mentioned. The tank designs as well, the design for the droid tank, the design for the droid wheel tank that we see, and also some of the creature designs for the creatures that the main characters fight in the arena at one point. And the Geonosians, you know, the designs for them. There is a lot on screen which I like to look at, but it's aged so poorly, this film. It's incredibly boring, it's terribly written with laughable dialogue, and it is simply the worst Star Wars movie to watch in my opinion. Because there's not anything to it. It feels fake and it looks fake. And those were pretty much my reasons overall why I think that this is the worst Star Wars movie. And so, all in all, as I've already said, as I'm going to say once more in this podcast today, Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, is a 3 out of 10 from me. Anyway guys, that's it for today's podcast. If you have seen Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, please let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. Maybe you loved the film, and if you do, that's awesome. Please let me know why in the comment section below, or maybe you feel similar to me. Whatever your thoughts are on the second Star Wars prequel, please let me know in the comment section below. And if you didn't know already, you can check out the podcast on Spotify. That's Night of the Movies on that platform. And if you did already listen to this podcast on Spotify, thank you very much for doing so. And you should also know that you can check out this podcast visually on my YouTube channel. Yes, you can watch this podcast on my YouTube channel. That's Night of the Movies on that platform as well. And wherever you did watch or listen to this podcast, thank you as always for watching or listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe to be updated for when I release new podcasts in the next couple of weeks to months to however long I keep going with this channel in the future. And yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe, and as we said, thank you so much for watching or listening. Man, this is a long outro that I've kind of lost track of, so I'm going to round things off by saying see you guys again soon, but bye for now. Bye.